evening. And thank you, Peter, for giving this opportunity to talk about the Minnesota semiconductor industry and the CHIPS Act. Just quickly, I am the president of Polar Semiconductor, which is the largest semiconductor chip manufacturing facility in the state of Minnesota. And why am I here? Why semiconductors? Semiconductors are the new oil, the Wall Street Journal says. I think it's more than that. Semiconductors are ubiquitous. They are the foundation of almost everything that we touch as part of our modern lives. By the way, semiconductors were invented here in the United States at Bell Labs. But over the last few decades, we have lost our leadership because we have outsourced, because the industry has outsourced manufacturing to Asia and other countries. And an unintended, but in my opinion, a pretty logical consequence of that has been that we've also exported innovation and advanced technology. The situation is actually quite serious. More than 90% of the most advanced chips in the world are made at one factory through one company in Taiwan. Companies like Polar, which make chips that go into your cars that you drive, and also for defense applications, we have been the front line of the supply chain fiascos of the last couple of years. This situation is not tenable and not sustainable from a national security point of view, from a supply chain resilience point of view. The United States government has recognized that, and two administrations worked on it. Congress passed in a bipartisan manner, and President Biden signed this legislation into law last year. It's a great first step towards United States regaining its leadership in semiconductor technology and in manufacturing. Minnesota, by the way, is, because of a history of computing and semiconductors, has a very strong ecosystem of semiconductor chip companies up and down the supply chain. And this ecosystem has a great opportunity to grow, build new companies, attract suppliers and other companies from other places to relocate to Minnesota to support the growth of our ecosystem, and in the process, create tens of thousands of high-paying jobs. The risk of not making the investments in Minnesota is that we sit on the wayside while $52 billion of public investments and a huge multiplier of that gets invested in states like Idaho, Indiana, Ohio, Arizona, New York, and Texas. And those states increase their state economies by hundreds of billions of dollars and tens of thousands of high-paying jobs. We cannot afford to, we should not stand by the wayside. And I really appreciate the work that Greater MSP has done to bring the companies of this ecosystem together and create a unified voice and a clear message. Why am I here talking to this audience of leaders and change makers? I want to tell you that this is not just about companies like Polar. It is much, much bigger than that. The opportunity is much, much bigger than that. Other industries, for example, medical device companies, which are, we're a leader in that area, will need advanced semiconductors as they develop their future products. Having semiconductor companies in the neighborhood is a huge advantage. Other businesses, construction companies, infrastructure companies, energy companies, Educational institutions like universities, technical colleges, high schools. By the way, at Polar, more than 50% of our employees are high school graduates without advanced degrees. These will create the pipelines for the workforce. Companies and institutions involved with job training, with workforce development, even companies that provide childcare. By the way, a requirement of the CHIPS Act is that if Polar gets CHIPS Act funding, we will have to provide or subsidize childcare. And this is a huge opportunity for the industry of Minnesota, of all of you here, to get together, cooperate, work as a unified system to really develop the next high-tech, advanced high-tech manufacturing in the state of Minnesota, create the next generation of workforce that will provide family-sustaining wages. These are all high-wage jobs that we're talking about. And this can only be done by making this investment, by being part of the whole ecosystem, and by making sure that we expand the participation to women, to minorities, blacks, indigenous, people of color, people from rural areas, veterans, and make sure that we attract them, and at the same time, the results, the fruits of these projects are also spread across the communities that we recruit from. I'll stop with a call to action by Gina Raimondo, who is the United States Secretary of Commerce. She says, let's build things in Minnesota and in America. Thank you.
We're going out.